Today, we're ranking every major Axis fighter from worst to best, from flawed machines to legendary warplanes. Some were outdated, some were deadly, and a few became icons of World War II aviation. So let's begin with the worst Axis fighter on the list. Number 10. Messerschmitt Bf 163 Comet, Germany. No aircraft on this list killed more of its own pilots without enemy help than the Comet. It was a rocket interceptor, and the problem wasn't the concept. Intercepting high-altitude B-17s at over 950 kilometers H was genuinely revolutionary. The problem was the fuel. The Comet ran on two chemicals, T-Stoff and C-Stoff, that ignited violently on contact with each other, and with almost anything organic, including human tissue. A rough landing, a fuel leak, or a hard bounce on the belly skid could turn the cockpit into a chemical fire. Powered flight lasted barely 7 or 8 minutes before the pilot had to glide home in an aircraft with almost no forward visibility and a notoriously hard landing. Ground crews and pilots alike were injured or killed handling and flying it, not fighting in it. It shot down a small number of bombers, but the accident and loss rate from its own fuel system made it operationally unsustainable. A fighter that threatens its own side as much as the enemy earns the bottom of this list. Number 9. Heinkel He 162 Volksjäger, Germany. The He 162 was Germany's answer to a war it was already losing, a jet fighter designed to be built fast, cheap, and flown by teenage Hitler Youth glider pilots with minimal training. It used a wooden airframe bonded with adhesives, rushed into production without the testing a jet aircraft needed. During its public demonstration flight, in December 1944, the aircraft broke apart in the air, killing test pilot Gotthold Peter after glue failure and aileron structural damage. That was not an isolated flaw. Wing skin separation and structural failures kept surfacing through the program. On top of that, the aircraft demanded far more skill at low speed than the pilots it was built for actually had. It reached squadrons in the war's final weeks, too late and too dangerous to matter, a jet built faster than it could be made safe. Number 8. Messerschmitt Me 210, Germany. The Me 210 was supposed to replace the aging Bf 110 as Germany's heavy fighter. Instead, it nearly ended careers before it ever saw combat. The aircraft was aerodynamically unstable, prone to snapping into an uncontrollable spin during turns, a flaw traced to its short fuselage and automatic leading edge slats that deployed unevenly. Test pilots reported the aircraft could depart controlled flight with little warning. Production was so troubled that the RLM halted the program in 1942 and the chief designer was removed. Hundreds of airframes sat completed but undeliverable while engineers tried to fix the instability. Only after extensive redesign, essentially becoming the Me 410, did the airframe become usable. As originally built, the 210 was a fighter that fought its own pilot before it ever met the enemy. Number 7. Arado AR-240, Germany. The AR-240 was pitched as a fast, heavily armed multi-role fighter, but it never escaped a chronic instability problem in yaw and pitch that engineers could not fully resolve across multiple prototype revisions. Handling reports described an aircraft that was unpredictable in maneuvers exactly when a fighter pilot needed it to be predictable. Combined with development delays and competition for more promising designs, the program was quietly abandoned after only a handful of aircraft were built. It never reached operational squadrons in any meaningful number, a fighter that stayed a problem to be solved rather than a weapon to be used. Number 6. Regian RE-2000, Italy. On paper, the RE-2000 was competitive with contemporary fighters in maneuverability. In practice, the Regia Aeronautica rejected it for frontline service because it lacked self-sealing fuel tanks and adequate pilot protection, a fuel-fed fire risk Italian commanders weren't willing to accept as the aircraft entered wider use elsewhere in Europe. Italy instead exported the design, with Sweden and Hungary building and flying their own versions. A fighter that your own Air Force won't commit to for genuine safety reasons has failed at the most basic requirement of the job, keeping its pilot alive long enough to fight. Number 5. Fiat G50 Freccia, Italy. The G50 was Italy's first modern monoplane fighter, but it arrived underpowered and in its earliest production form, with an open cockpit that hurt pilot comfort and high-altitude performance. When the Corpo Aereo Italiano flew it over Britain in the autumn of 1940, it was outclassed in speed and firepower by the Hurricanes it met, and the unit was withdrawn from that front within weeks. The aircraft continued in secondary roles, but its combat debut against a modern opponent exposed exactly how far behind it already was. Number 4. Mitsubishi J2M Raiden, Japan. The Raiden was meant to be a fast, hard-climbing interceptor to defend Japan against Allied bombers. Its Kase engine, driving the propeller through an extension shaft to keep the fuselage slim, suffered persistent cooling and vibration problems that engineers struggled with for years. Landing gear legs were also prone to failure. These issues delayed the aircraft's entry into real service until 1944, years later than intended, missing the window when Japan most needed an effective interceptor. A good idea strangled by mechanical problems it never fully solved in time. Number 3. Nakajima J1N Gecko, Japan. The Gecko was designed as a long-range, twin-engine escort fighter meant to protect Japanese bombers deep into enemy territory. In that role, it failed outright, too large and too poorly maneuvering to compete with single-engine Allied fighters in a dogfight. Escort missions using it were costly and largely abandoned. The aircraft only found real value after being converted into a night fighter with upward-firing cannons for intercepting bombers from below, a role its original designers never intended. It succeeded eventually, but only after its actual purpose collapsed. Number 2. Kawasaki Ki-45 Toryu, Japan. As a daylight heavy fighter, the Ki-45's underpowered air-cooled engines left it consistently outperformed by single-engine Allied fighters, and it struggled to hold its own in direct combat. It later found a genuine niche as a night fighter and bomber interceptor, where its twin-engine stability and heavier armament actually helped. But judged against its original intended role, a frontline day fighter, it clearly fell short, a design that had to be repurposed to find any real success. Number 1. Blohm Voss Bv-155, Germany. The Bv-155 never got the chance to fail in combat because it never got the chance to fight at all. Designed as an extreme high-altitude interceptor to counter American B-29 bomber raids that never came against Germany, the aircraft remained in prototype form when the war ended. Only a few airframes were completed, and none reached an operational squadron. It sits at the top of this worst list because unlike every aircraft before it, it wasn't undone by instability, fire risk, or mechanical failure. It simply never became a real fighter at all, a program overtaken by the collapse of the war around it. New moving the best Axis fighter. Number 10. Macchi C205 Veltro, Italy. The Veltro was what happened when Italy finally got a proper engine into a good airframe. Built on the earlier C.202, it was fitted with a license-built version of the German DB605, and the improvement was immediate. The Veltro could finally hold its own against Spitfires and P-51s in speed and climb. Pilots who flew it considered it the best Italian fighter of the war. The problem was timing. It arrived in real numbers only in 1943, as Italy's war was collapsing, and too few were ever built to matter strategically. But as a machine, it proved Italian airframe design had never been the weak link. Engine power was. Number 9. Kawasaki Ki-100, Japan. The Ki-100 is one of the best comeback stories of the war. Its airframe was the Ki-61 Hien, an aircraft chronically let down by an unreliable license-built inline engine that spent years grounded for maintenance more than it flew. When engine production collapsed entirely late in the war, Kawasaki engineers took the same airframe and fitted a dependable radial engine instead. The fix transformed the aircraft. Pilots reported excellent handling, strong climb, and, for the first time, an engine they could actually trust. It arrived far too late to change the war's outcome, but it remains one of the clearest examples of a fundamentally sound design finally getting the engine it deserved. Number 8. Nakajima Ki-84 He, Japan. The He combined real speed, strong 20mm cannon armament, and a climb rate that let it compete directly with late-war American fighters. Japanese pilots who flew early production aircraft rated it highly. Its limitation wasn't the design, it was Japan's collapsing wartime manufacturing. Fuel quality declined, parts tolerances slipped, and landing gear failures became common on aircraft built in the war's final year. A world-class fighter undermined not by its engineers, but by the industrial base trying to build it under bombing and shortages. Number 7. Nakajima Ki-43 Hayabusa, Japan. Lightweight and extraordinarily maneuverable, the Hayabusa was the aircraft that Japanese Army pilots flew across nearly every theater of the war, from China to Burma to the Pacific Islands. Its agility let pilots outturn almost anything they faced early in the war. That same lightness came from thin armor and no self-sealing tanks, a trade-off that made it increasingly vulnerable as Allied fighters grew faster and better armed. It never stopped being flown, produced, and relied on right through to the end of the war, a fighter whose strengths and weaknesses were two sides of the same design choice. Number 6. Mitsubishi A6M0 Japan. In 1941 and 1942, the Zero was the aircraft that defined the Pacific War's opening chapter: long range, exceptional turning ability, and a reputation that unsettled Allied pilots before they'd even flown against it. That range and agility came from an airframe built as light as possible, without armor or self-sealing fuel tanks, a decision that made it dangerously vulnerable once Allied pilots developed tactics like the thatch weave to counter its turning advantage instead of trying to outturn it. As newer American fighters arrived with more power and better protection, the Zero's early dominance faded, but its opening impact on the war remains historically undeniable. Number 5. Dornier Do 335 File Germany. The Do 335 solved a problem other twin-engine fighters couldn't: how to get twin-engine power without the drag of two separate engine nacelles. Its answer was a push-pull layout, one engine in the nose, one in the tail driving a rear propeller through an extension shaft, giving it exceptional speed for a piston-engine aircraft. It was genuinely fast and well-armed. But it was also mechanically complex, arrived late, and only a small number were completed before the war ended, meaning it saw almost no real combat. A brilliant piece of engineering that never got the chance to prove itself at scale. Number 4. Focke-Wulf TA-152H Germany. The TA-152H took the already respected FW-190 and stretched it for one specific job: dominating high altitude, where earlier German fighters struggled against high-flying Allied bombers and escorts. Extended wings and a more powerful engine gave it excellent performance at heights where other piston fighters ran out of breath. It reached frontline squadrons only in the war's last weeks in small numbers, but the pilots who flew it considered it one of the finest piston-engine fighters Germany ever built, a design that arrived brilliant and simply ran out of time. Number 3. Messerschmitt Bf 109 Germany. No Axis fighter was built in greater numbers or flew for longer than the Bf 109. From the Battle of Britain to the last days of the war, it was continually upgraded: more powerful engines, heavier armament, better high-altitude performance, and it remained a genuine threat throughout. Its narrow landing gear track made ground handling accidents a real and persistent problem, and its cockpit was cramped by later war standards. But as a combat aircraft, it carried the Luftwaffe's fighter force from the war's first day to its last, a workhorse whose sheer consistency across 6 years of war earns it a place near the very top. Number 2. Focke-Wulf FW-190 Germany. When the FW-190 first appeared over the channel in 1941, it outperformed the Spitfires it met so clearly that the Royal Air Force scrambled to respond. Its radial engine was rugged and less vulnerable to a single well-placed hit than the liquid-cooled engines of its rivals, and it carried heavier cannon armament than most opposing fighters. Pilots respected its diving speed and roll rate. It remained a genuine threat in the air-to-air role and doubled as an effective fighter-bomber, a versatility few other Axis aircraft matched across the entire war. Number 1. Messerschmitt Me-262 Germany. The Me-262 wasn't just the best Axis fighter of the war, it was the aircraft that ended the era of the propeller fighter. Its two Jumo turbojet engines pushed it to speeds well beyond anything piston-engine fighters could match, letting it intercept Allied bombers on its own terms and simply outrun escort fighters that try to catch it. The engines themselves were the aircraft's real weakness, with short operational lifespans and real vulnerability during the slow, exposed moments of takeoff and landing, which is where many losses actually occurred. It reached the war in numbers too small and too late to change the outcome. But as a piece of aviation history, the Me-262 didn't just fight the last war, it previewed the next one. If you think another Axis fighter deserves a higher spot, let us know in the comments below. For more World War II aviation rankings, legendary fighters, and forgotten war machines, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.